Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was Raised by the Third Raikage. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 11. Why do you fight? Wave Country, Tazuna's house, 4 days after arrival. Team Darui had been training. Even though Darui knew that his students could hold their own against a mid-chunin, and with En and Yujito working together they could fight a low jounin, he didn't want to take any chances. The team was currently eating dinner with Tazuna, Tsunami, and a young boy named Inari, who was a quiet boy that would always glare at the group of ninja. When they asked why Inari didn't like them, Tazuna explained what happened to a man named Kaiza and how he was killed by Gato to set an example for those who defied him. This, along with seeing the state of the town where the stores barely had any food and the streets were lined with beggars, filled the Kumo ninja with rage at seeing what Gato had done to the people of Wave. So Darui, how is your training going? Tsunami asked the dark-skinned man. It's going great. We're gonna make Gato drop like a weight. And rapped exuberantly. Tazuna and Tsunami looked over at Yujito for a translation. She sighed since she was the best out of anyone in Kumo besides A and the Raikage, who could understand N and B when they rapped. What he means is that our training is going great and that we'll be able to eliminate Gato, she translated. Inari looked down at his plate. Why do you even try? You're just going to die, he muttered darkly, glaring at his plate of rice and fish. Inari. Tsunami scolded her son, and looked at the boy before taking off his red shades and looked the boy in the eyes. We are going to get rid of Gato, he said with conviction. Tears leaked from the young boy's eyes. Shut up. You try and pretend that you understand us. Like you know what pain is. All your life you've lived protected in a shinobi village. You don't know what it means to suffer and to know pain. You, Inari cried out before En punched the table, making it crack from the force. Inari looked into the boy's eyes and his eyes widened when he saw the boy's eyes. En's eyes, which were the color of the sky and full of life and happiness, were the color of a vengeful ocean filled with anger. His pupil was a slit. You think I don't know pain? En stated angrily. My entire life, my brother, Yujito-chan, and I have been treated as demons for something that happened that was out of our control. Our whole lives we have been looked at with the same eyes. Eyes full of hate and fear, eyes that say go away, why don't you just go die? And continued on, not noticing Tazuna and Tsunami's eyes widening on what the normally happy boy was saying, but... And looked at Inari, who didn't know what to say. My brother, Yujito-chan, and I never let them get to us, we never hated them back. We swore to ourselves that we become the protectors of the same people who scorned and feared us, that we can prove to them that we aren't demons. And never once did any of us stop trying to achieve this and give up. We didn't stop and cry. We continued on, knowing if we just stopped nothing would be achieved, and glared at Inari. So before you tell us that you know of pain, remember you have a mother and grandfather who love you more than anything. That your grandfather is doing the same thing my brother, Yujito-chan, and I are doing, fighting against the so-called impossible. Your grandfather is defying Gato, who you say is invincible, but yet when he sends assassins to kill him they failed and the bridge is still standing. Gato is not unbeatable. If he was, then your grandfather would be dead and the bridge would have been destroyed. And stood up from his chair and walked out the door. The room was silent. Yujito made to follow her fellow Jinchuriki but stopped when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning around she saw that it was Darui. Let him go. He needs to be alone. Tazuna and Tsunami were trying to understand why the boy, who was so full of life and happiness, could have lived under such a life and still be so happy and carefree. Darui. Is what En said true? Why was the boy treated so bad? Tazuna asked the man. Yujito decided to answer. Tazuna, do you know what a Jinchuriki is? When Tazuna shook his head she continued, do you know what a Bju is? Aren't they chakra monsters? From the Ichibi to the Kyuubi? Tazuna asked him, to which Yujito nodded her head. Jinchuriki means power of human sacrifice. A Jinchuriki is a person who has a tailed beast sealed inside them. Yujito explained, much to Tazuna's, Tsunami's, and Inari's surprise. Jinchuriki are often hated and feared of the beast that lies within them. They are viewed as the very beast sealed inside them, though they themselves are just the container. Yujito looked down at her plate. The life of a Jinchuriki is a hard life where only few don't see you as the beast inside them, and even fewer who would try to befriend them. Most Jinchuriki go mad from the hate and either release their beast, which kills them in the process, or become insane and bloodthirsty, trying to find a reason to exist. Yujito said. And said you were one too, Yujito? Tsunami said. Yujito slowly nodded her head. Yes, inside me contains the Nibi, the two-tailed cat. she said, still looking at the plate of food, not wanting to see the same looks of fear and hate in their eyes. She jumped a little in her seat when she felt Tsunami's arm wrap around her in a hug. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. Yujito could only sit in silence. She knew of the beasts they carried and wasn't afraid of her and En. "That ain't right girly for you, En, and his brother to be treated like that. It's obvious you aren't the nibby, since for one you aren't even a cat," Tazuna said while trying to make a joke to lighten the mood. It worked, since Yujito smiled, a little grateful that the two didn't fear or hate her and En. She turned to Darui-sensei. "I'm gonna head upstairs and go to bed." She left, leaving Inari, Tazuna, Tsunami, Ko, and Darui in the room. Darui glanced at Ko, who had remained silent during the whole thing, he said, gaining Ko's attention. "If two civilians can see En and Yujito for who they truly are, means that you could see the same as them," he said before heading off to his own room to sleep, leaving Ko, who looked at the door where he had left before leaving for his own room, deep in thought. The next day, in Gato's base. In Gato's stronghold, Momochi Zabuza rested, recovering from his fight with Darui and En. A young female-looking boy was tending to his wounds. "If you keep this up, you may one day die, Zabuza-sama," the boy said. "I underestimated them. I won't next time," he stated. The boy was about to retort when the door opened and slammed against the wall with a loud bang. There, standing between two men with swords, stood the country tyrant and millionaire Gato. Gato himself was a short, midgety man with a cane, wearing a dark suit and sunglasses. He didn't look very happy. "You lost," he yelled angrily at the recovering Zabuza. "I spent good money on you, and you lose to one man and 3 kids," he ranted. Zabuza glared at the midget man in front of him, his ki leaking out. "I wasn't expecting to fight Darui of the Black Lightning. He said he is an S-rank ninja, and I didn't expect to fight a son of the 3rd Raikage," he continued on. Gato had a confused look on his face before his anger took him over. "So? I paid good money for you, and I'm not going to have you die on me. And what is so big a deal of the kid? Who cares if he is the son of the Raikage?" he scoffed out. Zabuza glared at him. "It's a big deal, since no one even knew that the 3rd Raikage even had a 3rd son, especially that said son knows the freaking lightning release armor." Gato just kept on looking confused. "So what? It doesn't sound like a big deal." Zabuza scoffed at the man's idiocy. "The lightning release armor is a jutsu created by the 3rd Raikage, where you take lightning manipulation to the highest and make it course through your body, making your nerves and muscles move quicker. It is one of the deadliest jutsu ever created, second only to the Hirishin, which was created by the 4th Hokage. The only ones who use this jutsu are the 3rd Raikage and his eldest son A, who is known to be the fastest man alive with the death of the 4th Hokage. The mere fact that the kid is able to perform the jutsu shows how skilled he is. Not to mention the fact that his lightning was red, which means he has some sort of bloodline," Zabuza explained to the tyrant. Gato just glared at him. "Even if he does know a good jutsu, you still got your ass kicked by a freaking kid." "Demon of the Mist." More like Baby of the Mist." He stretched out his hand to Zabuza's face wrappings. "Let's see what you really look like, demon baby." All of a sudden his hand was grabbed by the girlish-looking boy. The boy glared at Gato, breaking his hand in the process, making the midget scream in pain. "Don't touch Zabuza-sama with your filthy hands," he growled out. Gato's 2 guards reached to take out their swords, ready to defend their employer. In a burst of speed, the boy took out some bond needles and held it to the men's throats, ready to kill them at a moment's notice. "Haku," Zabuza said to the now-known Haku. "Release them," to which Haku did. Gato waddled quickly back to the protection of his guards and went out the door, but not before saying his last bit. "Don't fail me, Zabuza. You wouldn't like to see what happens to the people who fail me." There was silence in the room before Haku decided to speak. "Why are we working for that man, Zabuza-sama?" "Because we need the money," was his short and simple reply. Haku looked at the man in the eyes. "You know we can't win the fight. You said so yourself. Darui is an S-rank ninja while you are only high A rank, and the 3rd son probably beats me in speed with his armor." "I know, but we have to try," Zabuza replied. Haku started to walk out the room. "I'm going to look for some herbs. Don't try to strain yourself while I'm gone." In a forest, Haku calmly walked through the forest wearing a pink kimono instead of his hunter nin gear. His hair was down, touching his shoulders, making him look even more like a girl. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath and began to relax as he took in nature. Suddenly his eyes opened when his nose caught the scent of smoke and sweat. He decided to investigate. He followed the smell until he came to a peculiar sight. Haku saw the blond boy, who he realized was the 3rd Raikage's son, in the middle of a destroyed clearing, unconscious. Looking around, he saw burn marks on the trees and where a large boulder sat, which was twice as high as Haku and as wide, had a gaping hole in it where it looked like someone had punched it. Quite hard too, since it was pretty deep. Another peculiar thing were that some of the trees looked they had been cut down. But what really caught his attention is that it looked like it had been hit by a large drill and not by an axe. He glanced at the blond boy and saw 7 swords surrounding him. He must be able to use all 7 swords. That takes some skill. I doubt Zabuza could do it, he concluded. Haku remembered the conversation back at the base. This boy was a major threat. He walked over to the boy and placed his hand above the boy's neck but froze an inch above his throat. Can I really kill him? Haku thought to himself. Zabuza had always told him that he was a flawed tool for not being able to kill. This showed right now where he was able to get rid of a major threat but couldn't perform the deed. Haku sighed before moving his hand to the boy's shoulder and gently shook him awake. En's eyes slowly opened where he saw a beautiful girl smiling at him. Hey sleepyhead. The woman greeted. Wow, she's really pretty, though not as pretty as Yujito-chan, and blinked. Where did that come from? En sat up as he gazed around the clearing. He then brought his attention to the girl in front of him. Hey, sorry, I was letting off some steam, and I guess I fell asleep, he said, rubbing his head sheepishly. Haku decided to pretend to be a normal citizen and try to glean some information out of him. Oh, so you're a ninja? He asked curiously, and grinned as he pointed to his forehead protector. Yup. I'm a shinobi of Kumogakure, he said proudly. Kumogakure, is that the one with the Raikage as their leader? Haku asked, still pretending to be an innocent civilian who only knew the basics of ninja life. Yep, my dad's the Raikage, En said proudly. Wow, that's cool. So you must be very well liked there, Haku commented. He noticed a flash of sadness in his eyes before they turned back to his usual bright cheeriness. Well, not really, most people see me as a monster. The last part was murmured with En, not intent on having Haku hear him. But Haku was an experienced ninja and heard the words. Haku was a bloodline user who grew up in Kiri during the bloodline purges. His own father killed his mother and tried to kill him when he found out they possessed the ice release, so he was very opposed to the word monster. I never did get your name, he said, hoping to change the subject. En blinked before grinning sheepishly. Sorry, my name is En, he said, rubbing the back of his head with his hand. And like the letter, that's a funny name, Haku said with a smile. Hey, it's unique. My brothers are A and B, and we are probably the coolest people ever, En said, defending his name. My name is Haku, Haku said. Nice to meet you, Haku, En said happily. While they were talking, En's thoughts were confused. Her scent smells familiar. Where have I smelled it before? En thought to himself. Since En was a Jinchuriki, he had heightened senses. His sense of smell could match Inuzuka's if he tried, but he knew the risks of having a heightened sense all the time. If he used his heightened hearing, if he heard a loud noise, it could knock him unconscious. Haku could tell this boy in front of him was a kind person. He decided to ask him something to really know what type of person he was. Tell me, En, what do you fight for? Haku asked him, and seemed surprised at the question but thought of his questions. What did he fight for? Some people fought for fame, others for money, some of the darker ones were just to kill. But what did he fight for? Haku could tell from En's expression that he was thinking deeply on his words. He decided to help him out. Tell me, En, do you have precious people? Haku asked him seriously. As Haku asked him that question, En had flashbacks of his loved ones, of his father training him and always being there as support. He remembered the day when his father told him of how proud he was, the happiness he felt. He thought of his eldest brother A, who always protected him, B, and Yujito fiercely from the many haters, who trained him and would always be there for him. He thought of B, who many considered the two as twins because of their same personalities. He thought of how they had found a way to become perfect Jinchuriki, a dream they had always wanted to achieve. He thought of the many times they had rapped to it just to annoy him, and then running away in terror from A when he would give chase to shut them up with his fists, or usually his iron clawjutsu that would forever make him and B afraid of their big brother when he gets angry. He thought of C-sensei and Darui-sensei who helped train him and never once thought of him, his brother or Yujito, as monsters. He thought of Samui, Omoi, and Karui who knew that he was a Jinchuriki but still befriended him and Yujito while the others shunned them. And lastly he thought of Yujito, someone who he loved dearly and would give his life for her in a heartbeat without hesitation. As he thought of this, he realized that the feelings he felt for Yujito were different from the others. He realized right then that he loved her. He truly loved her, and would do anything for her and to protect her with his life. As he thought this, he realized why he fought. He fought for the people who had given him acceptance, the ones who he knew truly had his back, his loved ones, his precious people, and nodded high. I have my brothers, my father, Samui, Omoi, Karui, C-sensei, Darui-sensei, and Yujito-chan. They are the reason why I fight and grow strong, so I can protect them, he told Haku with fire in his eyes. Haku gave him a kind smile. Then you will become strong, since I believe that those who protect their precious people will become the strongest of all other ninja, he told En. So what are you doing in the woods, Haku? He asked. My friend is hurt, and I was picking herbs to heal him, Haku replied. When he heard this and realized who this person was, the hunter Nin, and thought. He decided to play it safe since he was still exhausted from his training. Here, I'll help. And Haku spent the next couple minutes picking herbs while having small talk. I think this is enough, I should probably head back home, Haku said as he stood up and left the clearing, but stopped when he heard En call out. Haku. You know the next time we see each other we will be fighting, you know that, right? En said. Haku froze and his hand twitched to his side where he had some bond needles stored there. He turned around to face En. How'd you figure it out? He asked flatly. When you killed Zabuza I caught a brief scent of you. It took me a while to figure out where I smelled it when we were talking, but when you said you were picking herbs for a friend who was hurt made it clear to me. And told him, making Haku curse for saying that information. Since you asked me a question, it is only fitting that I ask you one. How can you fight for Gato? He is a monster. What he is doing to Wave is inhumane, because we need the money, Haku told him. And frowned. Haku, you don't need to work with trash like Gato for money. You know what type of person he is. If the chance arrives he wouldn't hesitate to kill you, he told him, trying to make Haku see reason. Haku sighed. I know that, but where else will me and Zabuza find work? We're wanted ninja, we can't just get jobs from anybody. We have to get it from the crooks or we won't survive. Haku, you seem like a nice girl. He got confused when Haku's eye twitched but continued on. Why do you work with Zabuza? He's a wanted criminal. And asked Haku. Haku wanted to be truthful to the boy, so he decided to tell him of his life. Haku spoke of his life in Kiri, from when he killed his father and the mob, to living life on the streets, and finally meeting Zabuza, who gave him a reason to exist. The clearing was silent while En sat deep in thought. You know, we're a lot alike, Haku, he said. When he saw Haku's confused glance he gave a sad smile. You know that I'm the son of the Raikage, right? When Haku nodded he continued on. But what you don't know is that me and my second eldest brother be not treated the same as my eldest brother A, who is greatly liked and respected. Haku was confused. That makes no sense. Why would the people of Kumo like and respect your eldest brother A but treat you like a monster? He asked him, and chuckled. So you heard that? He asked, to which Haku nodded. Well, this should make it clear. I'm a Jinchuriki, he said. Haku froze, unsure if he heard him right. You mean that you contain a bju, like Yugura? He asked him, and nodded. Yes, Yugura contains the 3 tails, right? Well, I contain the Kyuubi, the strongest of the 9 bju. Haku couldn't believe his ears. Not only was he a Jinchuriki, but he also held the strongest of the 9. Haku then remembered what Zabuza had said that happened to all Jinchuriki, Yugura included, that Jinchuriki were thought of as monsters and few had ever had any happiness in their lives. And noticed that Haku hadn't run away from him in fear or disgust. I'm surprised you didn't run away, he said. Haku looked at him straight in the eyes. If I called you a monster or that you were the beast itself when I myself have been called that for my bloodline, I would just be a hypocrite. You are not the Kyuubi you are in, he said firmly, and smiled, happy that Haku could see the truth. Unlike many others, he had always noticed that those who had come from Kiri and held bloodlines had always treated the trio of Jinchuriki as normal people. They even defended them a couple of times too. He realized now that they probably didn't take kindly to people calling them monsters for what they held inside them, like the bloodline haters had done the same to those with bloodlines in Kiri. Thinking of this, En came to a brilliant idea. Haku, you and Zabuza could come to Kumo, he exclaimed. Whatever Haku was expecting, this was certainly not what he was expecting. What? En nodded fervently. Yeah. It could work. Kumo would accept you with open arms, since we highly appreciate having new bloodlines come to Kumo. And not to mention that Zabuza is a A-rank ninja and a member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, and has one of the 7 swords. Kumo is the second nation with the most swordsmen. If we had the Demon of the Bloody Mist join our ranks and teach our swordsmen, we could have even greater swordsmen. Not to mention we would have added manpower. And it would be good for you too, since you would have a place to call home and get money. You don't have to work with scum like Gato anymore. It's a win-win, and said, smiling at his plan. Haku thought about it. If he was honest with himself, he liked the plan. He was tired of moving from country to country, always looking behind his shoulder for Hunter Nin. To be able to finally have a home to call his own, not to mention that it was one of the 5 great nations and could protect them from Yugura, and to have people not fear him for his ice release and to respect him. It was a tempting offer, but would Zabuza think so too? Haku nodded and smiled at, and I'll tell Zabuza-sama of your idea. I agree with you on your plan. You will have our answer the next we meet. Until next time, En smiled at Haku. By Haku-chan, he said. Haku's eye twitched again. And I'm a boy, and with that left, leaving us sputtering En alone in the destroyed clearing. Once En gained control of his spluttering, he smiled. I hope you and Zabuza accept my offer, Haku. I know we can be good friends, En thought as he stood up to go back to Tazuna's house. As he climbed in through the window, he decided to not go to bed since he could wake them up. He just decided to sleep on the couch. When he got in a comfy position, he put his arms under his arms as he stared up at the ceiling, wondering if right now Haku was talking to Zabuza about his idea. With Haku back at base, Haku was in front of the secret entrance to Gato's base. He entered swiftly and silently. None of the guards even knew that he had entered. It showed his skill as an assassin, or maybe Gato was just bad at picking guards. As he walked down the hall, he heard footsteps. Deciding to not have the person know he was there, he jumped to the ceiling and stuck his hands and feet to the ceiling. Just as he did this, Gato and his guards appeared from around the corner. Gato had a cast over his arm from where Haku had broken it. He seemed to be talking to his guards. In a couple days my army of bandits will be here, and once Zabuza and his apprentice kill the Kumo Nin, I'll send them to finish them off. Or if Kumo does kill Zabuza, they are only 4 people. They can't fight over 200 men. With Zabuza dead, I can collect his bounty, and I bet that Darui guy has a big bounty too, and I bet many would pay for the son of the Raikage. This is going to be perfect, Gato said with a cruel laugh, his head moving up and down with his laughter. It was a shame, really. If Gato had kept his head up for a second longer, he would have seen Haku's eyes glaring down at him from the ceiling. One thing was for certain though, Gato was so screwed. As Gato and his guards turned around another corner out of sight, Haku dropped to the ground without a sound. He glared angrily at the corner where the midget man had been seconds before. How dare he! Oh, he is going to pay for this. Nobody double-crosses me and Zabuza-sama. Although once Zabuza hears about this, it could help him decide to take En's offer. Haku thought. Zabuza's room. The demon of the bloody mist was still stuck in his bed. He was trying to pass the time by thinking of strategies to defeat Darui and the rest of the Kumo ninjas. Zabuza heard the door open softly, and turning his head toward the sound saw his female-looking apprentice. What surprised him was that Haku looked murderous, something he had never seen from the boy before. Haku, why do you look like you want to stab someone repeatedly with a dull saban? Zabuza asked the boy. Haku took a deep breath to control his anger. I will tell you of why I am upset in a second, Zabuza-sama. I need to tell you something. I met the son of the third Raikage about 10 minutes ago, he bluntly told him. Zabuza sat straight up from his bed even though his wounds ached. You what? He yelled out. Haku just waited for his master to calm down before continuing on. Yes, I met him when he was passed out in the woods, he said. Zabuza glowered at him. And why didn't you kill him? He asked the boy angrily. Haku glared back, surprising Zabuza. He woke up the second I got near him, he told him, though it was the half-truth since he had the time to do it, but hesitated and En woke up. Zabuza, we can't fight these people. You were right with En being strong. Seeing Zabuza's inquiring look, he added, that's his name. You seem to know something I don't, Haku. Something involving the boy. What did you find out? Zabuza asked his apprentice. En's a Jinchuuriki, Zabuza-sama, Haku told him. Shock erupted on Zabuza's face like Yagura. Wait, which Ju does he contain? He asked, wondering which Ju he held. He contains the Kyuubi no Yoko, Haku said simply. Zabuza seemed to have a coughing fit. To find out this boy, who was not only the son of the third Raikage and could do the lightning release armor, and had an apparent bloodline that involves red lightning and was the Jinchuuriki of the Kyuubi. The boy would become a legend among legends. Zabuza sighed. Haku, how are we going to defeat them? I can't fight Darui and win. And you can't fight En and the others. We're trapped, he concluded. Haku smiled, making Zabuza look at him confused. And knew who I was. He realized that I was the hunter Nin. We talked and I told him why I worked for you and of my life in Kiri. He offered to take us to Kumo, Zabuza, Haku said. Zabuza looked at the boy shocked. Why would he offer us to join Kumo? We're his enemy. Are you sure this isn't a trick? Haku shook his head. He wasn't lying, I could tell. He said that his father would welcome us with open arms due to me having a bloodline and you being a member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist and an A-rank ninja who also wields one of the 7 swords. Kumo is the second nation with the most swordsmen. No doubt they would love to have someone of your skill teaching the next generation. A silence took the room as Zabuza thought it over. If he was honest with himself, he wanted to go to Kumo. Not only would Kumo keep them safe from Yagura, but also he could finally stop working for slime like Gato. As though Haku was reading his mind, he decided to tell Zabuza what he had overheard from Gato. Needless to say, when he found out how Gato was going to backstab them, Zabuza was less than pleased. A terrible amount of killing intent was felt all over the base. All the guards dropped to their knees out of pure fear, trying with all their willpower to not piss themselves. Haku waited patiently for Zabuza to calm down from his rage. When the Ki died down, Haku spoke. So I'm guessing we're no longer going to work for Gato? He asked calmly. When I see that fat pig, I'm going to. Zabuza broke off before he grinned darkly. Haku knew that look. Whenever he saw that look, someone was going to die, painfully. Haku, I have an idea, Zabuza said, still grinning that dark grin. Haku raised an eyebrow, curious to know what his master was thinking. How about we pretend we don't know, and when we go to the bridge we tell the Kumo ninja that we will judge each other's strength by fighting. But we won't fight to the death, we will just make it look like it, and when Gato thinks it's safe for him to try and kill us, we and the Kumo ninja kill him. Zabuza said with a laugh. Haku smirked at the idea. Surprisingly, I fully agree with you, Zabuza-sama, that pig deserves to die. Zabuza nodded his head in agreement, still grinning. Now all we have to do is wait. Chapter 12. Death to the Midget Wannabe Pimp. And woke up feeling someone shaking his shoulders. He slowly opened his eyes and rubbed them with his fists. He then saw Yujito standing by the couch where he was sleeping with a concerned look on her face. Are you okay, Enkun? I was worried about you, she said, concerned for her fellow Jinchuriki, and nodded. Yep, I'm fine, Yujito. I cleared my head and I'm ready to roll. He rapped exuberantly. Yujito smiled. Whenever En started to rap, it showed that he was fine. She then bonked him hard on the head. Baka, stop with your rap. You and B always do it. It's annoying, she complained. Hey, just because it showed that he was fine didn't mean she had to like the rapping. Ow, Yujito's so mean, En complained, rubbing the spot where she had hit him. Come on, let's go get something to eat, Yujito said, grabbing his hand and practically dragged him to the kitchen where the rest of Team 9 sat along with Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari, who looked pretty ashamed of himself. Yo, sorry about last night. I didn't mean to start a fight, En said in his normal rap style. It's fine, En. And we don't think any differently on who you and Yujito are just because you're Jinchuriki, Tazuna announced. En seemed taken aback. He hadn't expected that and was touched by their understanding. Thank you, Tazuna and Tsunami, he said with a small smile as he started to eat the food for breakfast. Inari was quiet, thinking about after he had gone to bed when Darui had come in and helped explain things about En and Yujito. He realized now that En and Yujito knew a greater pain than himself, and he swore he would change and be like them and to stand up for himself and his family. Ko was silent and just picked at his food. He had stayed up half the night thinking on what En had said during his outburst, and how Tazuna and Tsunami had thought of the two as human, and to what his sensei had said. He now realized how wrong he had been. They weren't monsters, the people who thought of them were the monsters, including Ko himself. He had decided after hours of thinking it over to accept them as teammates and to be friends with them. He felt so foolish thinking that they were the Kyuubi and Nibi reincarnated, along with En's brother B being the Hachibi. He wanted to change that. He wanted to help them and be friends with them, not one of the people who thought them as demons. Breakfast passed and soon enough Team 9 left the house to go to the clearing where they had been practicing. Wait, Ko said, making them stop. I want to say something. He looked at the ground and took a deep breath before looking at En and Yujito in the eyes. I'm sorry, he said, confusing En and Yujito. Seeing the confusion, he continued on. I'm sorry for thinking of you too and your brother, as your Bju reincarnated. I realized last night that doing so was incredibly foolish. It's obvious that you are just the container and not the host. Can you please forgive me? Ko asked En and Yujito, looking back down at the ground. En and Yujito were stunned at what Ko had said, while Darui let a small smile grace his face when he realized his words had made Ko realize the truth of the Jinchuriki trio, and recovered first, and with a grin held out his fist. Ko realized what this was and fist bumped him. Alright, Ko. Looks like you know what's on the get-go. And rapped with a smile. Yujito bonked En on the head. Baka. That didn't even make sense. She turned back to Ko, who was looking at the scene amused. Thank you, Ko. You have no idea how much it means to us for you to find us as normal people. Thank you, Yujito said sincerely with a smile on her face. Ko nodded with a smile on his face as well. They started to continue on to the training ground with the three genin leading, while Darui was trailing back watching Ko talk with En and Yujito. Looks like you were right and you did get to Ko, Darui thought, watching his genin team finally become a full team. The team soon got to the training ground. Think of where Team 7 was. And the three hidden cloud genins sat down as they waited for what Darui was going to say. Darui stood in front of them. Alright team, we're going to work on our teamwork some more since Ko will probably work with you too now, he said while Ko looked down at the ground ashamed. Darui noticed this and added, don't worry Ko, that was in the past, it doesn't matter anymore. Darui said with a smile. We have to be prepared for Zabuza and the hunter Nin, so we have to work on teamwork. And looked down at the ground guiltily, which was noticed by his team. And what's wrong? Ko asked the blonde. His name is Haku, and said. Ko quirked an eyebrow. Who's Haku? He asked while Yujito and Darui looked at En curiously. The hunter ninja, that's his name. And verified, shocking his team. What? And how did you find this out? Darui demanded from his student. En sighed but decided to tell them since he would have to tell them soon anyway. When I went out last night blowing off some steam I kinda fell asleep in the woods, he said lamely. What? And Kuin, why would you fall asleep in the middle of the woods when any of Gato's goons could have killed you when you're asleep? Yujito retorted angrily, and chuckled nervously. Edging away from his angry teammate, he woke me up and pretended to be a civilian trying to glean information out of me. After talking a little, he asked me a question, and said before trailing off thinking of his precious people, the reason why he fought and trained to get stronger. The rest of his team, however, were not privy to En's thoughts and wanted to know what the hunter Nin had asked him. And the question? Ko asked him, and jerked back to reality and grinned sheepishly. Sorry, he asked me why I fought, and I told him I fought for my precious people, the ones who saw me as me and not Kyuubi, the ones who I trust my life with. It was then I realized who Haku really was when I recognized his scent, the scent of the hunter Nin. I then asked him why he worked for Zabuza, and he told me he had the ice release bloodline. Darui narrowed his eyes. This could be a problem for when we fight him, since Wave is surrounded by water, and he has an advantage of using it for his bloodline. Wait, I'm not done, and said before continuing. He told me how when his father had found out that he and his mother had a bloodline, in the middle of the bloodline's purges in Kiri, he attacked and killed Haku's mother, and tried to kill Haku with a mob. Only Haku killed them before they could hurt him. He then spent several months in poverty trying to survive, which is how Zabuza found him. Zabuza gave him a reason to live, and that is why he is so loyal to the man. I told him I was a Jinchuriki and that I understood him, and that's where I got an idea. And the idea is? Yujito asked him impatiently, since she hated when he would say something interesting and then wouldn't tell you until you asked him. I told him he and Zabuza could join Kumogakure, and said brightly with his fox-like grin, "What? And you can't just go around inviting people to join Kumo, even if you are the third son. Just because you invited them to join doesn't mean that the rest of Kumo will." Darui told his rap-loving apprentice, and shook his head. "No, think about it, sensei. Haku has a bloodline which Kumo could benefit greatly from it, since we don't have any other ice-release bloodline users, which means when he's old enough Haku can sire an entire clan of ice-release users. Zabuza is an A-rank ninja and a member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist and wields one of the 7 swords which have special powers. He would be a great asset for our learning swordsmen. Haku and Zabuza are tired from running for Kiri's hunter Nin, and I bet that they would be loyal to Kumo if we protected them from Yugura and anyone else gunning for them." "He has a point, sensei," Ko told Darui. "Kumo could always use more bloodline users. Even though we have gained more bloodline and bloodline users from those who came from Kiri to Kumo, it's always wise to gain more." Yujito nodded her head in agreement to Ko's words. Darui sighed, since En did make a strong point. "Very well, En, but did Haku and Zabuza exactly agree to your idea?" "Haku agreed, but he is still gonna have to ask Zabuza. I bet he will accept, though I don't know how they're gonna tell us though. So we will probably find out when Zabuza is healed and we run into him again. Most likely on the bridge, since Gato hired him to kill Tazuna and destroy the bridge," Yujito concluded, to which her fellow Kumo ni nodded their heads in agreement. "Well, even if the two do join us, I'd rather have us prepared for any other things Gato throws at us." Darui then sighed. Why couldn't this mission have been dull? He asked to himself, much to the amusement of his students. Team 9 spent the rest of the day going over teamwork exercises. Konoha wasn't the only nation that relied on teamwork, as Kumo saw the perks of its shinobi working together, which when fighting an enemy the Kumo nin would work together to take down a more skilled and experienced enemy, reducing the casualties in each assigned mission. It also helped that with Ko now fully participating in the teamwork exercises with En and Yujito, their teamwork skills with all 3 of them were steadily increasing. Darui could see the potential of his 3 students was skybound. He believed that they had great potential, with En and Yujito being Jinchuriki and taught by the 3rd Raikage, and others including himself before he became their official sensei, and Ko being the heir of his clan, which was one of the strongest in Kumo and was taught in their techniques and jutsu. Darui believed they could become Kumo's version of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, though he knew that with being their sensei their missions were going to be anything but dull. As the sun set, Darui, Ko, and Yujito started to head back before Yujito noticed En was not among them. She headed back and saw him sitting against a tree branch high in the trees watching the sun set. Yujito jumped up to the branch, holding him. "Mind if I join you?" she asked him, and didn't answer, but she knew that he was saying yes. The two didn't speak, just watching the sun set over the ocean before En broke the silence. "I told you Ko was gonna come around." Yujito smiled as she leaned against her fellow Jinchuriki, looking at the sunset and the sky, which was a deep crimson color, with the sun being a golden yellow with it reflecting off the deep sea green ocean. "Yeah, you did say that. Do you think A and B are okay?" They did go to a base where Orochimaru could have been in there, and shook his head. "Nah, our big bros wouldn't have been killed by that snake. With A and B working together, killing him would be a piece of cake." And badly wrapped. Yujito shook her head at En's rap in amusement before she remembered something. "Our And nodded and looked at Yujito blue cat-like eyes with his own sky blue eyes. Yes, Yujito-chan, your family. I don't know what life would be without you. You're one of my most precious people. I would give my life for you, Yujito-chan. And told her firmly, shocking Yujito that En thought so much of her. Enkun, and looked back toward the sunset with a small smile gracing his face. You're one of the most important people in my life. I would gladly give up my life to save yours, or BNI, or ANI, or Dad. You guys are the reasons why I fight and train to get stronger, so I can protect you, my precious people. And stood up and held out a hand to Yujito, which she took, as he helped her up. Come on, we should go before Darui-sensei and Ko get worried. The two blondes headed back to Tazuna's house where the rest of their team was waiting for them. 3 days later, Tazuna's house. Team 9 was getting prepared for battle. It was the day they knew Zabuza would probably show up. Even if he joined them, there still was a chance of him declining. It was decided that En would stay back for a little bit in case Gato tried to pull a hostage situation. En was currently in his room practicing his elemental chakra control by making his red lightning gather in his palm and twist and turn while moving it to different fingers during random intervals. This was to help with his chakra control, which had sucked very much before he had started doing the exercise when he was still a kid training with his family. It was also used to help control his elemental chakra, since with more control the more powerful it will be. Hey, let my mom go! Inari's voice rang throughout the house, alerting En of intruders. En jumped out of his bedroom window and landed without a sound as he stealthily made his way to the front door, which had been left ajar. Going inside the house without a sound, he came across the sight of two bandits who were no doubt working for Gato. One man was holding Tsunami by the hair while Inari was in front of them shaking. The tall bandit with an eye patch on his eye was holding a sword in one hand while the other was holding Tsunami was glaring at Inari. Brat, the bandit growled, get out of the way or I'll kill you myself. No, please don't hurt my baby boy. Tsunami yelled out desperately. Inari seemed to stop shaking and gathered his courage before he glared at the two men. Let my mom go, he yelled before running toward the guards, not listening to his mother's warning of running away before she was knocked unconscious by the bandit holding her. And seeing enough, used the bandit's distraction of watching Inari run to them, and used substitution on Tsunami while leaping forward and grabbed Inari before the bandits could hurt him and deposited next to his mother. Inari, seeing who had rescued him, shouted out "Ni!" and flashed Inari a smile. Yo, Inari, he said with a peace sign. Hey, it's one of those Kumo ninja, the bandit wearing a coat exclaimed, and rolled his eyes. Really, what gave it away? The substitution or the headband with the Kumo symbol on it? And deadpanned. The man with the eye patch scowled. You may be a ninja, but you're still a kid and you can't beat us, he announced arrogantly, and held his two fists up like a boxer and made the bring it motion. The bandit with the eye patch growled and charged forward, his sword raised above his head, ready to chop the boy's head off. Take this, you punk, he roared and swung it at the boy, and patiently waited until the sword was close, and in a flash had one of his own swords pulled out, and quickly brought his sword in front of him, and had it clash against the bandit's sword. The bandit, seeing his sword stopped so easily by En, gritted his teeth, and put his other hand on his sword, trying to overpower En. This could have worked against an inferior enemy, but unfortunately for the bandits, En was not an inferior opponent, he was by far the superior, and pushed back the swords, and using the moment when the bandit had to step back or else risk losing his sword, and roundhouse kicked him, making him crash against the wall, and fell into unconsciousness, and rolled his eyes at the weak and unconscious bandit before looking at the other bandit, who looked shocked at him for defeating his counterpart so easily. Well, are you going to try to take the punk down? Or are you just gonna stand there with a frown? And asked him in his normal Enka rap, using hand motions to make his rap look more convincing. The bandit's eyebrow twitched before he rushed forward. I'll show you, he roared, holding his sword with both hands and over his head. The bandit in the coat swung his sword downward, aiming to cleave the boy in half, and simply spun around, making the blade miss him. Still moving, he brought his foot up and kicked the man in the side, making him fly into a wall, and soon fell into unconsciousness like his partner, and shook his head in disappointment. That was too easy, he thought, before turning back to Inari and his mother, who was still unconscious. He knelt down by Inari. Nice job, Inari, you were very brave, though next time make sure you have a weapon with you, and said, rubbing Inari's hair with a grin. He stopped grinning and looked confused when Inari put his head down and started to tear up before shaking his head angrily. Dang it, I decided to never cry again, but, he stopped and started to rub his hands against his eyes, trying to make the tears stop. Now you'll laugh at me again and call me a crybaby, he finished saying in between sobs. Inari felt a hand on his shoulder and saw that En had put his hand there with a smile on his face. It's okay to cry when you're happy, En told him. En and I, Inari said. and kept on smiling before turning away toward the direction of the bridge. Now then. I can leave the rest to you, right? Inari grinned yeah, and nodded his head. Okay, then I'm gonna go to the bridge. My team needs my help, and said before running toward the direction of the bridge where his team was. 15 minutes earlier, the rest of Team 9 at the bridge with Tazuna. Team 9-N plus Tazuna had reached the bridge where a heavy mist clung around them, making them strain their eyes to see into the mist. Sensei, this mist. Ko began before Darui interrupted his student. Yeah, I know, this is Zabuza's work, making them all tense up ready for a fight. Tazuna glanced around nervously. Where are my men? He asked. Zabuza probably had them not come, either by killing them or knocking them out. It matters on what his answer is to N's idea, Yujito stated, to which Ko and Darui nodded their heads. Sensei, should one of us go get N? He could be a great help if we fight, suggested Ko. Darui shook his head. Don't worry, Ko, and never was one to stay away from a fight. He's too much like his father and brothers. Darui decided to get the waiting over with and called out to the hiding demon of the mist and his apprentice Haku. So Zabuza, you did survive. From what my student has told me, he gave you and Haku a choice. What's your answer? He asked the hidden missing ninja, knowing that the next few moments would affect the entire mission. A chuckle came from everywhere before a figure appeared in front of them with his apprentice by his side. Right to the chase, I see. Very well, I accept your offer, but I want one thing before I come with you. Oh, and what would that be? Darui asked him warily. It has come to my attention that Gato decided to hire an army of bandits to get rid of me should I succeed in killing you and your team, or if I failed to kill you guys and collect our bounties. Now, I don't know about you, but I hate people who try to backstab me, so I want to have a fight with you where we don't actually try to kill each other but pretend we're fighting, where you will then defeat me, and lo and behold, Gato will probably appear with his army to take us out, and we defeat them together, and I will willing join and fight for Kumo as will Haku, Zabuza announced to them. Darui nodded his head. And was right with Gato betraying Zabuza, he thought. Very well, we agree to these terms, Darui announced. Zabuza grinned. Okay, then how about that rematch, Darui? Haku, you can fight the two genin. You have my permission to not kill them. Haku nodded. Hi, Zabuza-sama. Darui turned to his students and nodded at them. Ko and Yujito rushed forward towards Haku, who retreated backwards toward the middle of the bridge while Zabuza unsheathed his massive sword with Darui following his example. A cool breeze flowed across the bridge while Darui and Zabuza held their respective blades, waiting for the other to make the first move. A heartbeat later, and they jumped toward each other, clashing their large blades against each other, trying to overpower the other. Darui jumped back when Zabuza tried to do a side swing. Taking advantage of the sword being on the far right of Zabuza, Darui swung his sword upwards, knowing Zabuza wouldn't have time to block since his sword was on the side from trying to hit Darui. Zabuza leaned back, successfully dodging the blade, but while he had the sword miss any of his vitals, a cut appeared on his shoulder. Grunting, he jumped before smirking. You know, Darui, while I admit you do have a good skill with that sword of yours. He held up his hands in a certain hand seal that made Darui tense, knowing what jutsu Zabuza was going to use. You're no match for me with all this water. A large mist started to cover the bridge that successfully hid Zabuza from Darui, who was squinting through the mist trying to catch a glimpse of Zabuza. I see, so that's his plan. With us being above the ocean, Zabuza has enough water to last him for decades without straining his chakra, since there is already so much water in the air. However, he should never underestimate a jonin of the hidden cloud, Darui thought before he closed his eyes in concentration. Outside his body, a blue aura of chakra sparked to life, coming into a tangible substance. Darui then opened his eyes as he pushed his chakra outward, clearing the mist, which revealed Zabuza on his right running towards him with his sword out ready to cut him in two. Darui arced his blade, which met Zabuza's again. Furrowing his brow, Darui started to channel lightning chakra in his blade, making it spark with electricity. The result ended with Darui's sword to slowly yet progressively cut through Zabuza's massive sword. Zabuza, seeing this, quickly jumped back, but the damage was done as now only 2 inches of the sword remained unscathed. Seems like I should be wary of your sword. You're quite the swordsman to match my skills, Zabuza commented. Thank you, but I believe we are still fighting, albeit it's a spar until Gato gets here. Since you are joining my country, I must know of your skills, Darui said before he started to form hand signs to a peculiar jutsu that Zabuza knew himself. Zabuza did the same seals, and at the same time they both shouted water style. Water dragon and 2 massive dragons made of water rushed towards each other. With Ko and Yujito followed Haku where they stood near the middle of the unfinished part of the bridge. The 3 ninja could hear the sound of metal against metal coming from the sounds of their respective senseis fighting. Ko, let's work together, Yujito said, staring down her opponent. Ko nodded and stood by her side, his hand on his sheathed tanto, waiting for Haku to make the first move. Haku chuckled. I hope you do realize that we aren't enemies, more like sparring partners waiting for Gato to show up, he reminded them. Ko grinned. That may be true, but since you are going to join our country we have to see your skills to give to Raikage-sama, and also Ko said before Yujito finished for him. Kumo ninja never back down. Yujito and Ko rushed forwards with their swords free from their sheaths ready to strike down the ice user in front of them. Haku barely had time to jump out of the way from the deadly swords. He raised his hands and made a hand seal before saying water clone jutsu 6. Haku appeared surrounding the two cloud genin. Ko's eyes darted around taking note of the clones' positions and was already thinking of a strategy of defeating them. Yujito, take 3 and I'll take 3. Yujito charged lightning chakra to her katana and swung it at her chosen target's lightning style. Lighting arc. An arc of lightning chakra came out of her sword taking out the Hakus, making them turn into puddles of water. While this was happening, Ko rushed forward and managed to cut through one of the Hakus before it could retaliate. He charged for the other two that were standing side by side. The one on the right rushed forward while the other threw Senbon needles at him. Ko dodged the Senbon by running to the left, and as he neared the oncoming right Haku clone he charged normal chakra to his sword and feet and started to spin rapidly. This caused him to spin around rapidly, his sword a blur, as it easily cut through the two Hakus before they could get away, making them turn into puddles of water. Ko and Yujito regrouped and turned their sights back on the original Haku, who smirked despite the fact you couldn't see it due to him wearing his hunter Nin mask. I must admit you two are strong, Haku said before taking out a kunai and rushing towards Yujito, who met him holding a kunai in her hand as well. But you fell for my trick. Ko's eyes widened and he hurried to Haku, who still had Yujito in a kunai lock. Haku raised his free arm and started to do one-hand seals, shocking the two genin that the person around their age could do one-hand seals. Secret art. Crystal ice mirrors from the water clones. Large mirrors made of ice surrounded Ko and Yujito from the sides and above. Haku stepped toward one of the mirrors and seemed to sink through it before he appeared inside the mirror. I'm sorry, but this battle is over. No one has ever beaten this jutsu. I will not kill you since we are now comrades, so will you give up? Haku asked them. Didn't you hear us earlier? Ko asked. Kumo ninja don't back down, ever. Haku nodded. I have to respect that. All of a sudden Hakus appeared in all the mirrors and started to rain down Senbon on the duo. Crap, Yujito said. After a few minutes in the mirrors, Ko and Yujito started to look like pincushions, while Haku hadn't aimed for any vital parts. That didn't mean it hurt. Yujito had tried to throw a fireball ball jutsu at one of the mirrors only for it to not melt it. Ko had a larger advantage than Yujito since he was wearing armor, but he didn't have as much stamina as the Nibi Jinchuriki, and was slowly tiring as was Yujito. Haku then appeared in the mirror in front of them. Senbon raised. He spoke. I'm afraid this match is over. This next attack will render you unconscious. He threw the Senbon at the two as they closed their eyes waiting for them to hit. But all they heard was the clang of metal hitting metal. They opened their eyes to see En in front of them with two of his swords in hand. What took you so long? Yujito said in a low voice. En just looked at the two and smiled. I was taking care of some thugs. He turned his attention back to Haku. Haku, I thought you were going to join us, and said in a disappointed tone. Ko spoke up. He is. So is Zabuza. We're doing a spar to lure out Gato, he said between short breaths. And flashed Ko a grin. I see how well you're doing, he said cheekily, making Ko glare at him, though he really didn't have it in him, making En grin wider, while Ko just murmured something about stupid rapping blondes, much to Yujito and En's amusement. En returned his attention to Haku while he created two shadow clones and instructed them to pick up Ko and Yujito and to take them out of the mirrors. Haku didn't stop them as he wanted to spar against En to see who was superior in speed and strength. En rolled his neck back and cracked his knuckles. Ready, Haku? He asked Haku, who nodded. Hakus appeared in all the mirrors and started to throw Senbon at En. En easily dodged them through a series on movements and dodging. The bottom Hakus threw Senbon at En's legs, hoping to try and get a hit, since if one Senbon hit one of his leg nerves it would slow him down dramatically. Sadly for Haku, En jumped high in the air, making the Senbon hit the ground. Some of the top Hakus shot Senbon on the airborne En, but En just used his swords to cut the Senbon into small pieces, and landed on the ground, still batting away Senbon. A few hit their mark on his arm and legs, but En ignored it. If he could be punched through walls and trees by his brothers and father, then he could defiantly have small pieces of metal in him and still fight. En pulled out the Senbon from his body before speaking. You know, Haku, I think we should probably finish this since Gato will probably come soon. All of a sudden red lightning appeared around En, signifying that he had activated his lightning release armor. En just stood there as the Hakus went back into one Haku and continued to rain down Senbon on him. But alas, as since it was called lightning armor for a reason and the Senbon just bounced off him. In a blur of red lightning, En appeared in front of the mirror Haku, and he punched the mirror, making it shatter into millions of pieces while Haku flew back from the punch. With a thud, Haku fell on the bridge. Haku picked himself up while his hunter mask started to crack from where he had hit the ground, and appeared in front of Haku and did a roundhouse kick to his head, making him fly farther back again. Haku's hunter mask couldn't take any more strain and it broke into small pieces. Haku tried to stand, but he found it hard to since En's lightning armor had sent electricity into his body, affecting his nerves, making him unable to control his body. En appeared in front of Haku, rubbing his head sheepishly. Sorry Haku, I may have overdone it, he said. It's okay and I am fine, Haku said, though the lightning made it hard to talk, and then glanced over to where Ko and Yujuto were. They had gotten rid of the Senbon needles and were already standing, and knew Yujuto was already healing thanks to Nibi. The two walked over to where Haku was still on the ground while En was waiting for them. Damn, and remind me to never piss you off, Ko commented as he watched the lightning course through Haku, though it started to die down since En hadn't channeled much lightning into Haku since they were only doing a spar and he didn't want to cause any permanent damage. Yujuto glanced over to where Darui and Zabuza were still fighting. Gato should be here soon, she said. As soon as she said that, Darui disarmed Zabuza, his massive sword flying in the air until it landed behind him, the blade sinking into the bridge. Darui moved his sword to Zabuza's throat to make sure he stayed down. Although I think it's dull to say, but it seems that my team and I have won this fight, Darui said, glancing over to his students who were helping Haku up though and had to support Haku to make sure he didn't fall. Humph, was all Zabuza said, since it would be pretty hard to talk when you had a giant cleaver sword against one's throat. All of a sudden the sound of wood and feet hitting against stone echoed throughout the bridge before they heard a voice. You and your apprentice couldn't even take down one of them. Oh Zabuza, you disappoint me, an oily sounding voice called out. Everyone turned to see a short man in a suit with sunglasses holding a cane in one arm while the other was in a cast. The most noticeable thing about this man was not the man itself, but rather the large group of thugs surrounding him who were leering at the shinobi and trying to look intimidating. Is that Ko Yujuto? And En thought, looking at the midget. Gato. Tazuna growled out, glaring at the billionaire with eyes burning with a great hatred that if they could would have burned the man until all that was left of him was a grease spot on his bridge. I see you failed to kill them, Zabuza, but it doesn't matter. As with my army, I'm going to kill you, the bridge builder, and those Kumo ninja, and collect your bounties, making me even more rich. The most hated man in Wave pronounced arrogantly. Gato then took a look at Darui's students who had come to their sensei's side still holding Haku, though he stared more at Yujuto with a look full of lust, though I may keep the girl as entertainment, Gato said lustfully, and glared at the man unknowingly sending out Ki, making some of the weaker-willed thugs sweat slightly. So this is the man who takes from the poor and leaves them to rot while he himself is a pig, and stated angrily. Gato glared at the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. What was that, you brat? I said you're not even a challenge. And what's with the getup? You look like a wannabe pimp who is really just a midget, and said, shut up, you brat. Gato screamed as he was sensitive about his height. Who knew? We're getting off track, Zabuza said, making Gato return his attention back to him, his smile ever so smug. Yes, well, you see, you Rouge Ninja are just too expensive, so I decided why not kill you and collect your bounty. Don't feel bad, Zabuza, think of it as a business transaction, Gato said smugly. Zabuza began to chuckle darkly, making Gato's resolve waver before going back as he shot out, and why are you laughing? Are you happy for your death? Zabuza kept chuckling before saying, you're right, Gato, this is a business transaction. You see, Haku found out a few days ago that you were going to betray us, so we went to the Kumo ninja and told them if they let us live and you dead we would join their country. So in a sense we are selling our services to Kumo, Zabuza said, grinning when he saw Gato pale and tremble like a lost kitten. And no, that's impossible, Gato screamed out. Zabuza shrugged. Don't feel bad, Gato, it is a business transaction, he said gleefully. And no, Gato stuttered out before looking at Darui as though for confirmation. Although it's dull to repeat something that was just said moments ago, Zabuza is telling the truth. Darui put his sword away from Zabuza's neck and fully turned to the now terrified Gato. He pointed his sword at the man. Today is the day you die, Gato. Your crimes against the people of Wave have been judged and you are guilty. Hee. Next time, Gato, when you tell your thugs you're going to kill your ninja employees, don't announce it loudly when you're in the same building that they are in, although, Zabuza said, grabbing his sword that was in the bridge, making a shing sound. There isn't a next time, is there? Oh well, no one really cares as long as you are dead. Kill them! Kill them all! Gato yelled at his thugs. Zabuza held his sword at the ready, as did Darui, about to charge when they saw and come up to them. I want a piece of that asshole, for what he did to Wave and for what he said about Yujuto-chan, and said. Zabuza grinned. The more the merrier, he said happily. Can you fight multiple people? He asked, and grinned. Oh, you bet. The two Cloud Ninja rushed forward along with Zabuza, all running for the same target, Gato. With a look of pure fear, Gato ran through his thugs, using them as a supposed wall between the ninja who wanted him dead, all the while screaming, "Kill them! Kill them all!" Half of his thugs started to run forward, foolishly thinking that since they had superior numbers they could defeat the ninja. How wrong they were. Correct, they were superior in strength, but in skill the 2 jounin and 1 genin were far superior than the common thugs. With a crash, the front thugs faced Zabuza, Darui, and En. Darui and Zabuza slashed left and right, up and down, anywhere they could land a hit. As for En, he stood there as bandits surrounded him. "Hee, you can't beat us, kid," one of the thugs said. En smirked. "You can't beat me, you fools. When a fight comes out with a pop and a bang, you're still gonna look like tools," and then moved his arms and shoulders, making all 7 of his swords fly into the air before landing in their respective place of the hinge joint of his right and left arm, another between his shoulder blade and neck, one in his mouth, one under his left armpit, and another one on his raised right leg. This was the kenjutsu style he and B had created. As kids, the 7 swords dance. While it look odd, it was proven that it is a deadly kenjutsu stance and shouldn't be underestimated. What the hell?" one of the thugs exclaimed. "It doesn't matter. I doubt the kid can even move," another thug said, and smirked still in his stance before he jumped high into the air and started to spin rapidly in a buzz-saw-like fashion. Almost as fast as he had jumped, he started to descend, attacking the bandits from the air. Some tried to lift their swords above them to protect them from En's blades, but En, still in a buzz-saw motion, cut through them with ease. It was near impossible to predict his movements due to the sheer unpredictability of his stance. En was soon on the ground, dodging and attacking with ease, even with 1 foot on the ground. In order to kill more bandits, En would throw certain swords in the air to allow him to get to his enemy without getting hit. This showed when he started to do cartwheels while throwing swords in the air to allow him to do so. The thugs who only knew what side of the sword to stab someone had no chance against En and his kenjutsu skills. Some of the more smarter bandits tried to run away, but En saw them and threw his swords, which could also be used as projectiles, and watched while still fighting, using his whole body, and started to do quick backflips and caught each one that he threw either from a body or the ground, before throwing them in an arc and attacking more bandits. Soon enough, with the aid of Darui, Zabuza, and En, the thugs who had charged had been killed, while the other half started to back away from them in fear. I paid you to kill them. And I say kill them, or I'll kill you myself," Gato screamed out, still hiding behind the thugs. The last half of the bandits hesitantly stepped forward, but as they did so, a crossbow bolt hit the ground near their feet. Everyone looked toward the bolt had come from, and they saw in amazement was dozens of villagers armed to the tooth, pitchforks, swords, hammers, and pickaxes, anything they could get their hands on that could be used as a weapon, and leading them with a crossbow in hand and a huge smile on his face was Inari himself. "Inari!" and yelled, happy to see his friend. Inari flashed a grin before turning his attention back to Gato and his goons. "We're done with you stepping on us, Gato. If you want to try and control our nation, you're going to have to go through us," Inari yelled out defiantly, with the villagers roaring in agreement. With half their numbers already destroyed by the ninja and now outnumbered by the villagers, the remaining thugs fled, leaving Gato standing alone with Zabuza, Haku, En, Darui, Ko, Yujito, Inari, Tazuna, and all the villagers glaring at him. Gato shook like a leaf and backed away from the people who wanted him dead, before turning around and started to run away, trying to get to the boat his thugs and himself had come on, but ran into something solid. Gato fell on his butt, and looking up he saw with horror that the solid object he had run into was none other than Zabuza himself, who was grinning like a madman. Please. Mercy. I can give you anything. Money, power, land, women, anything. Please just don't kill me," Gato begged on his hands and knees. Zabuza smirked. "Nope. Have fun in hell, Gato. There are going to be demons far worse than me who are going to entertain you, but when I do die, I'm coming for you." And with that said, he swung his massive sword as Gato let out a scream that broke off abruptly as Gato was beheaded. Silence soon followed. The people of Wave could not believe that the man who had destroyed their home and their lives was gone, dead. But there he was, beheaded on the bridge he had tried and failed to destroy. Wave was free. Massive cheers enveloped the silence. People hugged each other with tears of joy in their eyes. They were free. The next week was a blur. The people of Wave, with the help of the Kumo ninja, got rid of every thug and person loyal to Gato. Gato's estates, businesses, and ships were taken and its items distributed to the people of Wave as compensation for Gato's crimes. Team Darui were hailed as the nation's heroes. People were even calling En the hero of Wave. Soon enough, all good things must come to an end, as now the people of Wave stood at the now completed yet unnamed bridge, watching Team Darui plus Haku and Zabuza stood about to say goodbye before they headed back to Kumogakure. Tazuna was the first to speak. Thanks to you the bridge was safely completed, but we will miss you very much. Tsunami smiled. Take care. And smiled. Don't worry, old man will come back for a visit again. Have no despair, this ain't the end. And said with his fist in the air with a rock sign. Tazun's sweat dropped. Maybe you can come back in a few years, he muttered before remembering what Elsen had said. Hey, I'm not an old man, Tazuna exclaimed, much to everyone's amusement, and noticed that Inari was trying to hold back tears. You'll visit for sure? Inari asked, and started to tear up to Inari. You're gonna miss us, are you? It's alright to cry when you're happy, he said. I am going to miss you, and Inari yelled, crying. I am gonna miss you too, yo! And yelled out, also crying. And Inari hugged and decided to give him a present for Inari to remember him. Here, yo, you can have my shades. With these you'll look as sharp as my blades. And rapped to Inari before giving Inari his red shades, which the tearful boy promised him that he would take care of them. After and Inari's tearful goodbyes, Team Darui plus Zabuza and Haku started to walk across the bridge, making them the first to ever cross it, all the while listening to the tearful goodbyes of the people of Wave. As they walked, En put his hand in his pocket and took out two things. One was a fancy scroll that was the color of the sea with the kanji for Wave on it, and knew what it was even though he hadn't opened it. The second was a gift that Inari had given him earlier. It was a piece of sea green jade around the size and shape of a large coin. On it was the kanji for hope. And smiled to himself, happy that he had given Inari hope once again. Back with the villagers and Tazuna's family, Tsunami asked her father something that had been making her want to know what the bridge was going to be called. Why, the super sexy Tazuna Bridge, of course. Tazuna said with a hearty laugh that was met with dead silence, making him brood. How about the Great End Bridge? Tsunami suggested. Yeah, the Great End Bridge, after En and I, who saved our country and gave us hope again. Inari said, to which the people agreed. It's official then. As the builder of this bridge, I now proclaim it as the Great End Bridge, Tazuna said with the people cheering. And from that day on, the bridge was called the Great End Bridge after the one who had given hope to those who no longer believed in it. Outside the gates of Kumo, Team Darui plus Zabuza were slowly approaching where Kumogakure was located. Kumo itself was surrounded around a giant wall that reached the sky and was made of a mixture of stone and a large iron gate that protected Kumo from invaders. You couldn't see over the wall from where they were, even though they were level with the wall as they were descending one of the mountains, as the entire village was hidden by clouds with only the tips of the mountaintops showing, why it was called the village hidden in the clouds. From their vantage point they could see the small guard post that held the gate guards. Two men named Shurisan, 1, and Nokujiri, 2. So this is the village hidden in the clouds. About damn time, Zabuza growled out, since he was rather irate. Why, you may ask? Because for the past week Zabuza had been the subject of En's rap, who had been trying to have Zabuza become a rapper just like him and his brother B, whom he had found out was the Jinchuuriki of the Hachibi, and surprisingly that Yujito was the Jinchuuriki of the Nibi. Finding this out, he was happy. He accepted En's offer of joining Kumo, since with 3 Jinchuuriki, with 2 containing the most powerful of the Bju, Kumo was on course to become the most powerful of the great nations, as no other village had ever had more than 3 Jinchuuriki. That didn't mean that he had to enjoy putting up with En's annoying rap, where he had repeatedly reached for his sword to shut the boy up once and for all, but Haku stopped him. Darui was leading the others with En and Yujito on either side of him, while Zabuza and Haku were behind them with Ko bringing up the rear. Hey look, it's Nokujiri and Shurisan, and said while taking off his red shades to look at the guards who were still not aware of their approach. I still can't believe you have extra sunglasses with you, Haku said, shaking his head. Hey, what happens if my shades break? I need to wear my shades to look cool, not flake, and reasoned in normal rap style, making Zabuza slowly reach for his sword, but Haku stopped him. No. Zabuza pouted but put his hand back down. Soon enough they were close enough for Zabuza and Haku to get a good look at Nokujiri and Shurisan. Shurisan was a tall, lanky man around the age of 20. He was fair-skinned and had light blonde hair and blue eyes. He wore a custom cloud jounin flak jacket over a black shirt. Nokujiri was broad and was made more of muscle than his partner, though he was nowhere near as strong as and the Raikage. He was dark-skinned like the majority of Kumo, with short black hair and brown eyes. He wore a jounin flak jacket under a black jacket. Shurisan and Nokujiri were some of the people who didn't see the Jinchuriki trio as monsters. They had at first been like all the others, but since they were one of the people who would chase after En whenever he did a prank, they got to know him and came to like him and his pranks. Right now the Nokujiri was asleep snoring, while Shurisan was sitting on his chair leaning back, look up at the ceiling, daydreaming. Team Darui reporting in from mission to Wave, Darui said to the two, making Shurisan jerk from surprise and fall off his chair while Nokujiri woke up with a snort. Oh hey Darui senpai, anything interesting happened during your mission? Shursen said, trying to make them not comment on the fact they weren't doing their job. You could say that, Darui said, moving over, revealing Zabuza and Haku. While the two were unfamiliar with Haku, they paled when they recognized the demon of the bloody mist standing right in front of them. It probably didn't help that he looked rather angry. The demon of the bloody mist. Shursen stuttered out, and grinned. It's a long story, he said. I see, was all Nokujiri said. So can we get in? It's rather dull to just be standing here when we need to go report into Raikage-sama, Darui said. The two guards nodded their heads and allowed the team in, allowing them to enter their home. Wow, so this is Kumogakure, huh? Zabuza said, since he had never been to Kumo before. The Kumo ninja understood what he was saying, as Kumogakure was much different from other hidden villages. There were few buildings, as most homes and shops were carved into the mountains themselves. Most of the mountaintops had wooden and metal porches, though most of the mountains themselves were hollowed out to allow room for the people. And centered in the middle of the village, the Raikage Tower stood proudly among the mountains and buildings. It was in the largest mountain and was covered by a huge dark blue dome made of glass. The symbol for lightning was displayed. There was a garden on top of the dome, and on the very tip of the mountain a large antenna was placed along with steel cables that was attached to the tower to help support it and give signals to the computers. The group headed towards the Raikage Tower. There were some complications when people recognized Zabuza walking freely in their village. Ninja appeared thinking he was a threat, but stopped when Darui ordered them to not attack Haku and Zabuza, as they were friends and not enemies. They hesitantly listened to the command of the elite Jounin, but some followed them from the shadows to make sure they didn't try anything. This was when Zabuza and Haku noticed the looks En and Yujito were getting from the people. They saw the looks of fear and hatred directed toward the blonde Jinchuriki, who didn't seem to notice them, as they were used to this. Haku recognized it right away, as he himself had this happen to him. The look of ignorant fear and hatred, but he himself had never had it this bad. He admired the fact that En and Yujito never let the glares get to them. Zabuza begrudgingly thought the same, as he respected Yujito and En's willpower to not let the glares affect them and still wanting to protect them, though he would never admit it, as he didn't want to look like a soft. Ko also noticed the glares that were sent at his teammates, and glared back at the villagers and ninja, who seemed surprised that the heir to the Aobuyoki clan was defending the demons. Soon enough they entered the Raikage Tower and headed up to the top of the tower, where En's father would no doubt be there. They soon came to the waiting area, where Darui informed Kurai to tell the Raikage that they had completed their mission, and to tell him the debriefing. En wanted to just charge into his father's office, but Darui held him by the collar to stop him from doing so. Soon enough they were told they could talk to the Sandaime Raikage. The Sandaime Raikage was sitting at his desk, a scowl on his face as he fought the never-ending battle against his greatest enemy, paperwork. He looked up, saw with a surprised expression that was quickly put into an emotionless expression when he saw the demon of the bloody mist and a young girl behind his son's team. Darui, would you mind explaining why an A-rank missing nin is in my office? He asked them, glaring at the missing nin, making him sweat nervously, as Zabuza knew he stood little to no chance in a fight with the Sandaime Raikage despite his age. Well, as you can see, the mission was far from dull. Darui then started to tell the Raikage what happened during the mission. He remained expressionless until Darui got to the part where En had fallen asleep in the middle of the woods and had proposed his idea to have Haku and Zabuza join Kumo. You idiot, why would you fall asleep in the middle of the woods at night in enemy territory? The Raikage roared at his youngest son, making him back up nervously. Hey, I was tired, yo. I just didn't want to get up and go, En tried to explain through his rap. He quickly moved his head to the side as the Raikage threw a barbell at his head, making it impale the wall behind them. Idiot. And what's this about having these two join my shinobi forces? I have no need for them, the Raikage growled out. Actually, uncle, we do, Yujito told the Raikage, calling him uncle, though she saw him more as a father since she could barely remember her own father. The Raikage turned his attention to Yujito, his glare softening as he looked at the person who he considered his daughter. Seeing that his attention was on her, Yujito continued, Haku is an ice release user, the last of the Yuki clan, Yujito informed the huge man. The Raikage's expression changed to thoughtfulness. He had to agree that Haku would be a great addition to his country, as there were no ice users in Kumo or anywhere else, as he had sent scouts to look for those with that bloodline due to its power. It was a shame that Haku was a girl and as such couldn't be put under the Ciari to rebuild her clan, meaning it would take longer for there to be more Hayatan users. He thought, unaware that Haku was in fact a boy. And what of Zabuza? He is an A-rank missing ninja. While he is strong, he has no bloodline, and how could I trust him? He asked them, and spoke up, but Dad, he is a member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, and wields one of the swords, plus think of what he can teach our swordsmen. And told him, Raikage-sama, your son and his team saved my life and my apprentice's life from Gato, and if I join Kumo, then I can finally stop looking behind my shoulder for Hunter Nin. I swear upon my sword and status of being one of the 7 swordsmen, I will swear loyalty to you and Kumogakure, Zabuza said. The third Raikage thought of it for a few more minutes before nodding to whatever he was thinking. Very well, you may join Kumogakure. Though know that you will be under probation for 2 months and will be accompanied by my storm, and when we believe you loyal enough you will gain the rank of Jonin, but without the power to order any of my men and women until you earn it. Further, you will also teach some of our aspiring swordsmen what you know of Kenjutsu, as you are without a doubt very skilled in that area. And as for you Haku, you will have the same terms as Zabuza, but will instead be given the rank of a genin, and will be assigned a genin team, though you can still be Zabuza's apprentice. Now normally if you were male you would be put under the Clan Restoration Act to revive your clan, but since you are just a girl I just hope you will revive your clan in due time, the Raikage announced, and started to laugh while Haku's eyebrows started to twitch. What's wrong, girl? The Raikage asked the ice user. Dad, Haku's a boy, and said between fits of laughter. Eh? No, she's not, and she's a girl, the Sandaime Raikage said. Actually, Raikage-sama, I am in fact male, Haku said irritably. Nanny! After the Raikage got over the fact that Haku was indeed a boy after everyone else confirmed it, much to Haku's anger, he had Darui continue on with the mission report. He listened with rapt attention as Darui described the fall of Gato, and Wave becoming free again along with the completion of the bridge. Did you receive a scroll from Tazuna? He asked them, and took out the scroll and handed it to his father. The third opened it and started to read it. When he finished it he smiled. Is that scroll what I think it was? And asked his father. His father nodded. Yes, this is a scroll containing an offer of an alliance between the Land of Wave and the Land of Lightning. We are being offered a percentage of the money coming from their ships along with discounts for items of interest along other matters. In accordance to this, the Land of Lightning, or more specifically Kumogakure, we are to send troops in to help protect the country. As a show of good faith I am going to send 2 supply ships to Nami to help stabilize the poverty rate and to help them get on the right foot, he said before writing his signature as the Raikage of the village hidden in the clouds to the scroll before handing the scroll to Kurai. Send this to the Lightning Daimyo immediately, he commanded, which she left to do so. He then turned back to Team Darui, Zabuza and Haku. As the leader of the hidden cloud, I welcome you to our country. I'll have Falcon show you are. But I promise you this, if you ever betray my people and country I'll kill you myself, he warned them. Zabuza and Haku nodded their heads before Falcon emerged from the wall from where he had been hiding before escort the 2 new Kumo ninja to their place of residence, and to show them a more detailed tour of Kumo. The third Lightning Shadow looked at his son's team with pride in his eyes. Thank you Darui, Yujito, and Ko, you 4 did a great deal for your nation. You should be proud of yourselves, you have gained Kumo a valuable ally, he said, proud of his ninja. Thank you Raikage-sama/uncle, I told you pops how good I am. This is just the beginning, and when it ends it'll be with a bam. And exuberantly rapped before he was bonked on the head by an annoyed Yujito. Baka, can you ever stop rapping? She complained. Raisin chuckled at how the 2 Jinchuriki acted around each other. I can see them getting together in the future, he thought humorously as he watched Yujito scold his youngest son for always annoying people with his enka rap. While his son did what any man would do when scolded by a woman, he would lower his head, shuffle his feet, and would say yes ma'am or no ma'am or I'm sorry ma'am and I'll try harder ma'am dejectedly, while Ko and Darui watched in amusement at the 2. The third coughed, gaining the attention from the 2 blondes who blushed with embarrassment. Moving on, he continued, I'm giving you 4 a week of vacation. You may choose what to do with this. But since you 4 went on an A-rank mission I need you to have some lower rank missions or it'll look unfair for the other genin. So you're going to be doing D-rank missions for a while, he said, gaining groans from the genin. You're dismissed, he said, and they all bowed to him and started to head for the door. And stay here for a moment, I need to talk to you, he told, and which earned him a confused look from his son. Soon enough the door opened again, showing A and B. And immediately noticed that his dad and A looked rather nervous, and while B was still his normal self and greeted him with a fist bump and rap, he noticed some tension, though it was only slight. And I think it's time that you know of your biological family, the third Raikage said, wanting to get to the point of it, though he feared the results. And looked at him confused and just said what was going on through his head right now. Wah! Chapter 13, Origins Known. With Ko, after Team Darui-N left the Raikage, they got their checks from Kurai for their A-rank mission. Ko bid Darui and Yujito farewell before heading toward his clan compound. While the Abuyoki clan was not the largest clan nor did it have a bloodline, it was still considered one of the most powerful clan in Kumo. The Abuyoki were famous for their high Suiton manipulation and genjutsu, along with having a summoning contract, which was rare in Kumo. Their summoning animal was the bear, a feared summoning. While they were not on par with the second Hokage, they still were a feared clan by many countries. As for genjutsu, most of the village's best genjutsu users / besides see who was the best / which was good, since Kumo shinobi seemed to lean to more of the taijutsu or ninjutsu part of shinobi life, and every the clan compound itself was located in a part of the village that didn't have as much mountains, meaning that there were actual buildings. The houses were made of wood and were traditional Japanese-themed houses. Many small streams stretched throughout the compound, and there were swanas in the compound as well. As Ko entered the compound, his cousin Sunabu, greeted him. "Ako-sama, I see you've returned from your mission with the demons," Sunabu said snobbishly. Sunobu was a fairly lanky teen around 18 who wore a fancy red haori and had long brown hair put in a ponytail, was rather plump, a small thin mouth, and arched eyebrows that made him look like a snob, which he was. Sunobu wasn't a ninja, as he didn't think it was worth risking his life for Kumo. Ko never did like him. "Don't call them that. They have names," Ko said angrily. Sunabu was surprised by Ko's comment so much he tripped over his robes. "I beg your pardon, but you sound like you were actually defending them," Sunabu said, scandalized. Ko glared at him angrily. "Their names are En and Yujito. They are my teammates and my friends. I will not let you insult them." Ko growled out, angry that Sunabu was insulting his teammates. Ko then turned around and headed toward his house, leaving a sputtering Sunabu alone outside. With a scowl in place, Sunabu straightened his robes before marching importantly towards the clan head's house with his head high in the air. Ko's father needed to know of this. Back in the Raikage Tower, complete silence reigned through the Raikage's office as B and the Raikage stared at En, who stared back at them in shock. En was completely confused. He had just found out that he was the biological son of the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, best known as the Yellow Flash of Konoha, and was even faster than the only man in history to achieve SS rank and a flea on sight on contact. I had told En of how he had found En when he was a baby, when his biological father and mother dying by sealing the Kyuubi inside him. I also told En what his mother / who they still didn't know who she was / and how she told A to protect him. A and the Raikage stared at En with slightly fearful eyes. They were fearful that En would feel betrayed by them and wouldn't want to see them again, something they never wanted to happen. "So my biological father is the 4th Hokage," En said hoarsely. I just nodded his head. "I see." En's head lowered, shadowing his eyes. "Well, that's okay," he said cheerfully, looking back up with cheerful eyes. "What? And what do you mean that's okay? Are you not going to see us as brothers anymore?" A asked him, fearful of his answer, and turned his attention to him and smiled brightly. "Is that why you and Pops are looking so worried?" he asked him. Raisin brightened when he called him Pops. "But and you just found out about your real parents. Are you mad?" "Why would I be mad? Just cause I'm related to him doesn't make me any less in Yatsuki. He may be my biological dad, but you're my real dad," and said before looking at B and A, "and you're still my brothers. I could never stop thinking of you guys as my family." En's smile brightened. "Plus the Yatsuki clan just wouldn't be as awesome without me. And since I'm the son of the most powerful Kages ever, just think how strong I'll become," he said excitedly, a sigh in relief before he hugged his brother tightly, which B and their father joined in. "I told you, you fools, Lil 9 is one of our brothers. Together we can defeat the most dangerous of foes." B rapped while they hugged before A punched him. "You idiot, you're ruining the moment. Ah, come on, big bro, don't be such a hater on the first go." And rapped back. "That didn't even make sense. It doesn't have to. As long as you accept what is due, and that's rap, you fool." And rapped back. A groaned. "Why couldn't I have gotten normal brothers?" he complained, making everyone laugh. "Ah, come on, without us the Yatsuki are down too, and without our rap to lighten the mood, your life would just be cruel," B rapped. A rolled his eyes. "Yes, that's exactly what people should see the Yatsuki clan as. A bunch of idiot rappers," he grumbled. N and B pouted while Raisin chuckled deeply. "So you're not mad at us for not telling you?" he asked his son. "No way. You're my family no matter what. You're the one who raised me. You're the ones who taught me everything I know. Because of you I am the person I am now." N's expression turned thoughtful. "Does anyone in the Leaf know I'm alive or that I even exist?" and asked his father. Raisin shook his head. "No, not that we know of, since Minato had lots of enemies, and I would bet my hat that if IWA found out he has a son, they would no doubt want to kill you as an act of revenge for what he did to them during the war. There are only 2 people that I know who probably knew of your birth, and that is the 3rd Hokage and Jiraiya of the Sannin." Raisin looked at N with a serious expression. "And whatever you do, don't seek out Jiraiya. From what my spies have found, that he hasn't been in the Leaf for 12 years after Minato's death. But we found out what he has been doing for the past 12 years, that he is searching for something, or to be more specific, someone." And nodded in understanding. "He's looking for me," he whispered. "That is what I believe also. If Jiraiya ever discovered you, he would without a doubt try and capture you and take you back to Konoha, While you are strong for your age and you aren't at his level. Though if Leaf even tries to get you they'll have hell to pay, Raisin said gruffly as he would never let them take his youngest son away. If they ever do try to get you they'll have to go through us, he said, to which B nodded his head in agreement, and smiled at his family. Okay, stay away from the Sannin, how hard can that be? It's a big world, the odds of me ever running into him are a 1 in a million, and said, seriously, what were the chances of that ever happening? Okay, so can I go? I want to ask Zabuza if he can teach me that cool jutsu. And said with a smile. Alright, and you can go, Raisin said, to which N nodded before leaving to look for Zabuza. That went well, A commented. B snorted. Of course it did, it's Lil 9. I don't get why you thought things wouldn't be fine. Aside at his younger brother's rap, why can't you and N talk normally? He complained. Be cool, not a fool, was B's reply. Alright, you two knock it off. I still have to send 2 supply ships to Wave, Raisin said, to which his 2 oldest sons nodded their heads before leaving, with B trying to convince her that rap was so much cooler, while A would yell at him for being an idiot. Raisin shook his head in amusement, as this would always happen with his family, and he would never trade that in for anything. Back with N was currently walking through the streets of Kumo with his normal smile in place while he was trying to locate Zabuza so he could ask him to teach him the hidden jutsu, since he thought it would be a pretty badass jutsu to learn. And if Zabuza refused, he would do what he always do to get the person to finally agree, annoy them by rapping until they caved just for him to shut up. Hey, what works works. N was still thinking about the truth about his heritage, and he was being honest with his family when he said that they were still his family no matter what. Even if they weren't related by blood, they still were a family. They raised him and supported him through every moment of his life. He thought of what life would have been if A hadn't rescued him. He didn't want to think about what life could have been as a Jinchuriki in Konoha when the same just sealed inside him attacked it, and without a family to help him. It scared him to think of a life without A, B, Dad, Yujito-chan, and everybody else that had been there for them. He was happy to be in Kumo, with his family and precious people, and then suddenly stopped, smile gone, as he heard the faint whistling of metal cutting through air. And grabbed a kunai out of his pouch and quickly stopped the shuriken that were head towards him. All of a sudden N's vision darkened as though he were blind. Genjutsu, he thought. He felt Kyuubi mix his chakra with his slash, barely though, so no one would sense his chakra. Of course, slash, and N's sight returned, just in time to see a sword swinging for his head, and quickly blocked the sword with his kunai and tried to punch the mysterious assailant, but the man caught his fist in his hand, much to N's surprise. The mysterious attacker then roundhouse kicked N hard as N went sailing and crashed into a tree. As N started to come out of the tree, he stopped when he felt the cold feel of metal against his neck. You've gotten quicker with your genjutsu dispensing, Enkuen, but you need to be faster. An emotionless voice came from behind him as N felt the blade remove itself from his neck. Rubbing his neck and looking behind him with a grin, he saw Weasel behind him in his normal storm gear. Hey, Itachi-sensei, and said with a small wave. A sigh could be heard from inside the now known Itachi Uchiha as he took off his weasel mask. And Sama, you do know there is a reason we wear masks, right? He asked with a deadpan. Well, lots of people know who you are even with the mask, and reasoned. Yes, but it's part of protocol, Itachi reasoned back. And smirked. Hey, since when have I ever followed the rules? Never, Itachi said, as the answer was obvious, and nodded happily. Exactly. Itachi smirked inwardly as he would never let someone such as him give away such an obvious emotion. Itachi thought, and as a little brother like Sasuke, Itachi thought, wondering if he was getting strong to avenge his clan. Itachi had been in Kumo for at least a year and a half, and while he had heard that there were Jinchuriki in Kumo, he didn't know which ones, as he was still considered unfit to know such knowledge, which was understandable. But Itachi wasn't considered a prodigy of prodigies in the Uchiha clan for nothing. He easily managed to put together the pieces of the puzzle that was N. He noticed the glares and mutterings of the civilians and ninja whenever he or the other two passed by. He found out from an unaware civilian who was talking a little too loudly that B and Yujito were the containers of the Hachibi and Nibi respectively. But it was N that didn't make sense, as he knew already that Kumo had the Nibi and Hachibi. So why was N treated badly when he didn't even contain either Ju? It soon started to fall in place. Itachi noticed how N was born the same year of the Kyuubi attack on his old home Konoha. What was even more, his birthday was October 10th, the same day the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. He also noticed that N looked a lot like a certain blonde-haired, blue-eyed man who became the fastest man in the world. It was obvious when Itachi put it all together. N was the Jinchuuriki of the Kyuubi and maybe the son of the fourth Hokage. He then went to the Raikage to confirm his suspicions, where from the man's guarded expression he knew he was right. Of course, the Raikage threatened to kill him very painfully if he told N about his parentage, as he wanted to tell him he was ready. After promising that he wouldn't tell N since he knew that the Raikage loved N like his own flesh and blood, he didn't want to destroy that. Itachi had first met En when he had been heading to one of his favorite training grounds, and he had seen En also training. Since he had found out who En was and what he contained within him, Itachi was curious to see how strong En was. Needless to say, Itachi was impressed within 5 minutes. The things En had been doing were easily high Chunin and low Jounin training exercises, and the kid never stopped. Even when Itachi could see that he was deadbeat tired, he kept going on and on. The boy just didn't know when to give up, if he even knew what giving up means. That was when Itachi had made his presence known. En had been surprised to find out that he had been watching him, but was happy that Itachi was impressed. While En wasn't considered a prodigy like Itachi, he had something that made him even better than a prodigy. He had the guts, drive, and determination to get strong. The boy never stopped training, and it showed how strong he was because of it. That day a friendship was born by an Uchiha and Yatsuki. Itachi knew how much En wanted to gain the approval of the village, and he wanted to help him. Itachi never believed that a Jinchuriki was the bj inside them. It wasn't logical, was what he believed. They were just a container, nothing more, nothing less. Itachi became a sort of a sensei to En. He would help him with his genjutsu by using his Sharingan to cast genjutsu on En whenever he wasn't expecting it, and would attack him. This was to help En react quickly if he ever found himself in this sort of predicament but with an enemy. En would also learn some of Itachi's jutsu he had learned or copied by using his Sharingan. Even though Itachi wasn't a lightning nature, he had still shown him the seals and instructions to use the jutsu that he had copied, though sometimes Itachi would give Yujito some fire jutsu if she were ever with En whenever Itachi taught him. I'm curious about something, Enkun. From what I've heard from my fellow Storm, that Zabuza Momochi and an apprentice of his have joined Kumo. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? He questioned the blonde Jinchuriki, and smiled. What do you think? And then started to tell Itachi everything that happened during the mission. I'm not surprised, Itachi said, making En look at the older man in confusion, that you brought back hope to the people of Wave. You seem to have a gift to bring the best out of everyone and befriend anyone you meet, whether it's a friend or enemy. En looked surprised. You think so? Itachi merely nodded. A small smirk graced Itachi's face, though it was slight, and if you weren't observant you wouldn't have been able to see it. So the part where you were watching the sunset with Yujito-chan and were telling her that she was one of your most precious people and that you would give your life for her, did you kiss her, and Nanny? En sputtered out. I'm not surprised with that either. It's rather obvious you both like each other. It was only a matter of time, really. Itachi commented, rather enjoying though he never showed it the spluttering mess that was En at the moment, who was turning a rather bright red that would make a certain Hyuga heiress jealous. I don't have a crush on Yujito-chan. En tried to deny, though the blush wasn't helping him look convincing. Sure you don't, Itachi commented dryly. Can we please talk about something else? En complained. Very well. While you did successfully break out of my genjutsu, it was only around a low B-rank genjutsu. If I had wanted to kill you I could have done it with ease. And rolled his eyes. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not good with genjutsu. Jinchuriki, remember? We can't really do that, mister. I have a dijutsu that allows me to use genjutsu with ease, he said sarcastically. Jinchuriki or not, you must be prepared to fight against a skilled genjutsu user. If you were an enemy of mine and we fought, I could easily place one of my best genjutsu on you, and by the time you even realized you were in a genjutsu you'd be dead, Itachi reminded him. And nodded his head. I know. I gotta keep training until I can beat your best genjutsu. You'll have to train for a long time then. I wasn't considered a prodigy of the Uchiha clan for nothing, Itachi said a little sourly, since he still hated his clan for what they had tried to do, and noticed they were getting on the topic of Itachi's family, and changed the subject. So how'd the mission go with my brothers? Did you kick that snake's ass by showing what Kumo has to show? He asked in rap. Itachi, being used to N and B's rap, didn't comment on his particular speech style. No, it seemed that Orochimaru was not in the base at the time of the assault. Damn, that snake is a coward. If he had been there we could have gotten rid of that asshole. And swore. Don't worry, Enkun, if we ever find out Orochimaru is in Kumo again we'll get him. He may be one of the Sannin, but not even he can defeat your brothers and the entire Kumo military, Itachi assured the angry Jinchuriki, and nodded his head before looking at Itachi excitedly. So are you gonna show me an awesome jutsu? Ha ha! And said, jumping up and down like an excited 3-year-old who had just been told he could buy anything he wanted in a candy shop. Itachi, amused by En's childish nature, decided to tease him. If only for a little while. While I could do that, I have to train myself too. You're not the only one trying to get stronger, but you're an S-rank ninja. You know you're stronger than me, and thus you must help me get stronger first. En reasoned. Itachi chuckled. Okay, I'll teach you this jutsu I've been wanting to teach you for a while. Itachi then made a hand seal and a clone appeared by Itachi. I know that you can use shadow clones. This is a special type of clone that I created myself, Itachi said, which made En's eyes widen since Itachi had never taught him any of the jutsu he has created, since most need the Sharingan to be able to use. Attack the clone, Itachi instructed, to which En nodded and shot forward with his arm covered in crimson lightning, where he quickly punched the clone, which to En's surprise turned into dozens of crows that quickly flew around the air, while some flapped around him, with him waving his arms to try and make them leave him alone, since they were everywhere and he could barely see. This is my crow clone. As you can see, the user creates a clone while visualizing the chakra stored inside the clone to mimic crows, while I use real crows due to them being my summoning animal, since you have Kage level chakra due to you being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and have good chakra control. For someone your age, you can easily spare the chakra to create these clones. The crows can be used to distract an enemy like it did with you by surrounding them and crowing loudly, which you can use your enemy's distraction to take them out, Itachi explained. Suga! You're so awesome, Itachi-sensei! En yelled out, excited to learn one of his first sensei's own original jutsu. Thank you, Enkun. Now before you try and start, Itachi began before he saw En make a seal and shouted crow clone jutsu, and imagined his chakra to shape into birds while still attaining a human form. A poof of smoke appeared by En, and when the smoke cleared, it revealed a human body that sort of resembled En, but instead of it having a nose, it had a large beak, and where its arms should have been were wings, while half of its body had feathers. En watched with a sweat drop as his clone started to flap his wings, trying to fly while cawing rather loudly. Itachi threw a kunai at the failed clone before turning to En. Maybe next time you should wait until I give you more instructions and more details, he said to the sheepish En. Itachi and En spent the rest of the day learning the jutsu. While it did take a while, En never stopped trying. Even when he started to get the symptoms of chakra exhaustion and was lying on the ground, he didn't stop until Itachi told him that was enough for the day. And even then En was complaining that he could still go on. Their work wasn't for nothing, as En managed to make a clone that looked exactly like him, but when it got hit only one transparent crow came out. But Itachi had said that was good for his first day trying to make it. Even though En wasn't a prodigy, you had to give the boy credit for his determination. En didn't need to be a prodigy to be one of the strongest ninja to walk this world. All he needed was his guts and determination.